Back in a minute. Hashtag tidying up. Right, if you catch up on this in replay, you would have seen me doing a little sprint to the other side of the room. Anyway, there we are. We're back online now. Welcome to Oversoul Truth Music YouTube channel with a very, very important topic this evening. And something that came to me earlier today when I think about the name of this YouTube channel, Oversoul Truth Music. You could actually categorize those as one thing, truth music. But of course, here, I'm not just sharing. It's fine to share music, but I'm not just sharing music. I'm sharing truth. Yes, truth through the medium of music, but of course, in discussions like the one that we're going to have this evening. The truth of subjects that affect all of us. And I'm going to use 3 songs. I've done this for a few weeks now. So through the medium here, through the energy of Oversoul, which for me represents every single one of us, and the essence and the being and the energy and the connected nature of us as a human family. So we are together 100%. Now, just to spend a moment or two thinking about the link between 3 songs that I'm going to share with you now, titles from the album I Am Cathedral, with the subject matter that I'm going to be discussing in a moment. Tracks 9, 10, and 11. And I'm going to explain them very, very clearly. I'm not going to give descriptions of what the songs are. I haven't done that on previous weeks. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to use them as a foundation, as a basis for the inspiration, the essence of them. But like music, of course, they are open to interpretation. And so without further ado, if we move on now to that, and remember, if you're not watching live, if you're catching up in replay, and even if you are watching live, either or, comment, like, subscribe to this channel, share this channel, because I am growing the medium of the connection and the importance of creativity, and especially through the genre of truth music, but also, as we're doing this evening, through communication, talking, conversation. That's why your comments are so important, because we need to talk about things that, sad to say, often don't get talked about. And that's my aim, that's my vision. I'm not going to maneuver away from subjects that could be considered to be challenging to talk about. I do need to emphasize as well, just for the benefit of others, not for my benefit. I'm not saying this for my benefit. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I have to do that. I have to do that. I'm not claiming to be an expert on whatever the topic is that I'm talking about. That is one of the greatest lies and mistakes that's made in society, because there's too much emphasis put on experts. Now, somebody could say, yeah, but what about if you need brain surgery? You want an expert. That's taking this discussion to an even more extreme degree. Of course, there are levels of life and experiences in life which require an expert. But for all of us, we are experiencers. We have experienced our life. We have gone through what we've gone through, the reality that has happened to us. And the key is to share that. And that's really what I want to do with you. And that's why I welcome your comments. So 3 songs, and I'm going to come to the topic matter in a moment. 3 songs. Track 9 is called The Madness Bus Called Us. Track 10, Fish Tank. And track 11, Perimeter People Protest. Now, if you just think of those song titles, let's just take them. The Madness Bus Called Us, heavily ironic, heavily to do with looking at the imbalance of certain things in society. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, and flipping that thought around. Hence the Madness Bus Called Us. Fish Tank. Fish Tank is all about perspective. It's all about the difference between what might be the view in, for example, a fish tank, in contrast to what the view out is. Very much touches on the subject of mental health, and it's a very personal song to me of my experiences. Track 11, Perimeter People Protest, is the angst, the indignation, the inhibition, the prohibition of the system, and rising up from the edges to come together as one unified force with regard to questioning, not just questioning, but actually rising up against how things are portrayed. So let me, without making it a direct link, I'd like to share with you a discussion on mental health. Now, I've already mentioned at the beginning, declaration of interest, declaration of, more accurately, experience or expertise, as it's referred to as. That will not stop me talking about this subject, and it shouldn't stop us talking about this subject. That is one of the greatest lies that stops, that nullifies, that prevents our human family from joining together in discussion. Of course, if we're talking about expertise in regard to clinical treatment of mental health, well, then I do defer to those 100% who have more experience than I do. But that shouldn't prevent us talking about the subject. And the angle that I'm going to talk about the subject of mental health from, you don't need to be an expert to realize. You just need to be, as we all are, an experiencer. Now, some of the language I use and some of the references and the way I choose to share this subject will be quite strong, will be quite what some could consider to be offensive. They are not. They are not. It is truth. And it's become a popular phrase, cancel culture. Well, I'm not going to over discuss that, but I am going to talk about the fact that, again, there's a neutralizing, there's a nullifying of the opportunity to speak, to share open, honest, real discussion and conversation on topics that feel at times uncomfortable to talk about. And that's why I'm talking about them, because we need to. So, thinking about mental health. Now, I had a couple of thoughts the other day, which I've shared in social media. We tend to internalize the external. Now, several years ago, I experienced very deep depression. And again, just to assure you, I'm not saying with depression, anxiety, paranoia, however mental health may manifest itself. I am not saying that medicating the condition is a bad thing. Of course, in cases, we would need to do that. But we live very much in a world that prescribes medicine for basically everything. And it's not dealing with many of the fundamental things that need to change. That's why I'm holding this space for us to have this discussion. Because, of course, it suits big corporations, big pharma, medicinal companies who want to pump into various places a medical prescription for absolutely everything. Yet, we are often just seeing things dealing with symptoms, not dealing with causes. And that's something I really want to open up in discussion this evening. And I would welcome your comments very much so, because it's such an important thing. It's such an important thing that it gets talked about a lot. But, and I am going to say in my opinion, what is at the root cause of many of the cases of mental health, it's not being looked at. Why? Because it's the system. Because it's the system that is the problem. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Having experienced depression, I went through the thoughts of thinking through that process, through taking prescription drugs for deep depression. Actually, am I actually depressed? Well, truth be told, the situation was repression, suppression, and in many cases, oppression. So can you begin to see why I said the thought we tend to internalize the external? I permitted, and I take responsibility for that now, I allowed circumstances, situations in my life to control how I felt and how I thought. You could say, well, of course, that's natural. I'm not going to go into detail, but it was, multiple things, many things going on at the same time. Some, of course, I was very much responsible for my own outcomes in my life. But when we are made to feel less inadequate, we are made to feel that we are not of this world. We're different, we're a misfit, we're strange, we're weird. At best, I suppose you could say eccentric. Interesting word, I've been thinking about this. So there are societal conditioned norms, what is referred to as norm. Now, with everything that's been experienced in the last couple of years, it really did affect me deeply. Keep hearing the phrase, and even now it gets bandied around. When are we going to get back to normal? There isn't normal. There is no normal in society. There is no normal in the system. That's the point I'm making. So wouldn't it make sense to impose, to restrict, to constrict? And this is where my language is getting strong. To restrain, to inhibit, to limit, to prohibit natural freedom of expression. So we now live in a hamster wheel system. We've lived in it for a long time. It's been that way for a long time. Generationally, it's conditioned where if we just feel that things are just not right, things are just not normal, things don't feel real, often that can lead to issues of mental health. What's being done about the system? In recent times in UK government, if you're listening here from another country, let me know how it is for you. Politicians are liars. Politicians are liars. I'm not necessarily saying every single politician is a liar, but what I am saying is 100% pandemic. Within belief systems, within education, these are messages that I've shared before because they are so important. Because what happens is the effect is treated, not the cause. The symptom is treated, not the cause. That is truth. What do we do about that? Now, I am not necessarily proposing. I remember John Lennon saying in one of his final interviews, he said of the song, Give Peace a Chance, openly and honestly, his words, he said, I'm not saying we've got the solution. I'm just saying, give peace a chance. And a simplistic way of thinking, some people would say that's idealistic. Why? It's idealistic in comparison to the ongoing, continuing system. And the system is creating victims. It is creating victims. The whole process, from a young age, we are made to feel less by not adhering to the system's educational way of being. If we have our own way of educating, or families choose to have their own way of educating, do you see where I'm coming from? Everything is external. Yet, we internalize that external often. If you feel this is just, it doesn't make sense, just naturally. Life doesn't make sense. And then you explore that further. You start to look into things and you start to research, to study, to look behind what is projected and to look for truth, to look for sense, to look for understanding in the madness that surrounds us, the madness that surrounds us, that many people go through life just thinking it doesn't make sense. Whether that is the recent restrictions that have happened, it's ridiculous. But here's what happens. Here's what happens. When anybody expresses anything that is different to the indoctrinated system, they are immediately preceded by a variety of expressions. And one of those expressions is anti. So by that name, if you think of the medical experiment that's taking place recently, the amount of language that individuals choose to share towards somebody who has made a choice, not to accept the medical experiment that has been prescribed. Where does the sanity lie in that? Now, I want to clarify that because I am not raising a question mark over those that have made a choice to accept what was prescribed. I am not. But the individual, oftentimes, here's another one that strikes me. In social media, lots of people shared this. Basically, I'm going to call it what it is, the vaccine, or call it what other people call it, the vaccine. Okay, just so we know what we're talking about. Now, within that, many people said along these lines, you probably would have seen this in social media, I don't know what's in the vaccine. But equally, this is them talking, equally, I don't know what's in, a McDonald's quarter pounder. I don't know what's in this. I don't know what's in that. What kind of reasoning is that? What kind of reasoning is that to say, I will accept this because equally, I accept loads of things in my life that I don't know what they are. I accept loads of things in my life that I don't know what they are. That's not a reasoned way of looking at things, is it? So the point I'm making, if you've chosen, and if you choose the vaccine, that's your choice. But if you choose not to, guess what? It's one and the same thing. That's your choice. And if we're going to live in a world where a fabricated, manufactured way of being says this is mandated, this is a legal requirement for you to do this, that cannot be the case. That cannot be the case. That goes wholesale against our human rights, absolutely. So no wonder when you think of this, when others become aware of things like this, or it could be their own innate spirituality, they realize I can be spiritual without having to conform to what is an impossible way to be. So the indoctrination within religion, which belittles people, makes people feel guilty for things they have no need to feel guilty about. And oftentimes, as I've shared in previous lives, those who steer these ships of hypocrisy more often than not, those that steer them, are steeped in corruption of the worst form that is imaginable. And this is not, to use the term, historic. This is not something that is going back in time. These things exist now. So then when you put the mind against those things, isn't it natural for us to feel suppressed, repressed, oppressed, constrained, restrained, restricted? No wonder that leads to many of the mental health issues that I have experienced in the past, you may be experiencing now. The system not has to change, it doesn't even have to change. It needs to end. It needs to end. And whatever form it takes, it makes no difference. We have the right, through the miracle of birth, through the miracle of life, through the miracle of the manifestation of what we have, the physical being we are, we should and must express ourselves as the natural form of us. The norms, the conditioning for people to societally make others feel at best different, other forms weird, eccentric, out of what is the considered norm. The considered norm, and I'm talking about societal conditioning, I'm talking about the systems of government, of religion, of education, even within certain ways that the family is structured. People talk about free choice. That works both ways. This is the point. So back again to the previous thought. We can say we have freedom of choice. We have freedom of speech. Watch out. Watch out. Because it is under attack. And we are free spirits. Yes, there is responsibility and accountability for each and every one of us. Where's the responsibility and accountability of those who are apparently in control? Remedies. Remedies. If I am going to give any prescription, which by the way I'm qualified to do, we all are, this is what we need to talk about. This is what we need to share, because otherwise the system carries on. So here's my thought, and here's my thoughts. And I've thought it a lot recently. I've gone into rooms of people recently, and many people of a free mind space, free thinkers, creators. And the thing that has affected me every time that I've entered into that space is that I have been in a room filled with, here it comes, experts. Experts. We need to move away from this training regime that tells us, no, you can't express that opinion because you're not qualified. We are qualified in life. We are qualified in experience. It's not just about talking, of course, it's about listening too. That's where I've learned. When I've listened to others and the benefit gained from that, both ways. It's an interchange, it's an exchange. No wonder things have been set up to marginalize individuals, to isolate, to disconnect. And that isolation and that disconnection, whether it is through belief system, which the current prescription has been, to spell it out, through what some refer to as the vaccine has been. It's a cult. It's a cult because it has promoted judgment. Even in recent announcements from Health Secretary, even recent announcements, there wasn't a U-turn. There wasn't a U-turn. There was a turning of the light of, we're going to have to do this because of, almost in a way, I'm not quoting word for word, but the fault is on the part of the NHS staff. Can you see how slippery, how insidious this system is, because it's all about power. It's all about wealth of a minority. The majority of us, we have responsibility and accountability too. And the responsibility and accountability that we have is to live the best version of our lives that we can. And one of the ways to do that is communicate openly with others. And whatever it is that locks down that thought, whatever it is that locks down that thought, whatever it is that prevents that thought, is engineered, is manufactured to prevent individuals from communicating, from sharing ideas, from sharing creative thoughts, from sharing innovation. Because life is all about creation. It's not about work. It's not about being plugged into a matrix-like system. It is not. It is about you. It is about the essence of you. It is about the freedom of you. It is about the power of you. It is about the miracle of you. It is not about men and women in suits who are claiming to represent human beings. We do not need it. We do not need it. The system is corrupt. Let's not even talk about changing it. Let's work on individually within our friends, our family, our acquaintances, those that surround us, those that we're close to. Work to create, in whatever means that shows for you. Work to create, because we are making a society. Society has changed. If we look back through history, and it's very challenging to know what is believable and what isn't. But when you look through the history that has been projected to us, there have been changes. Well, guess what? There can be changes into the future too. So I would love to know your thoughts. How do you feel about that? Do we need to just continue to accept the system as it is? Do we need to continue to feel restricted, constrained, restrained, which can lead to severe health issues, and one of those being mental health? What can we do? What can we do together? How can we transfer the energy of the realization? How can we transfer the energy of the realization that this is not how it's meant to be? This is not how life is meant to be. What can we practically, tangibly, actually, in reality, do about that? And if the answer is nothing, if your answer is nothing, if your answer is it's a big problem and it's going to take a long time, that's slightly better, because then at least we can begin to take the action that is going to change the future for others. And that is not just with the next generation. That's a very conditioned way of thinking. A conditioned way of thinking that, well, thankfully, the next generation will take care of that. That's what every other generation has thought. Working together, coming together, awakening together, and creating. The system doesn't work, and it makes people very, very ill in a number of different ways. So I wanted to share that message with you, and I'll just share one final thought. In fact, I'm going to share some poetry. I'm going to read you some poetry that I wrote the other day. So let me just bring that up. What can you see from the outside as you cast the first stone? Down an isolated cul-de-sac, feel no belonging, no home. Sifting through to get to the doers, beyond the sayers, sometimes we may feel adrift and alone. Yet beyond the sycophants and the media space rants, there is a new horizon to call our own. And a very often used phrase, we live in hope. We have to, but we cannot continue as we are. And with the latest debacle, I'm going to call it as it is, as I feel it, as the energy tells me to say it, as Oversoul, the connection of all of us directs me to say it, the debacle. We've moved from people policing thoughts. And what I mean by that is through education, through family indoctrination, through belief system indoctrination, to an actual physical act against others, manipulating the minds of others through guilt and fear into the thought that you cannot keep your job, you cannot look after your family unless you do what we tell you. That is grotesquely unacceptable. It's a choice for those that choose to do that, but if individuals do not choose to do that, we cannot live in that world. We cannot live in that world because that is grotesquely imbalanced. So let me know what you've picked up from the time we've spent together here. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I don't need to be. I'm an experiencer as you are. Mental health does matter, not just as a hashtag, not just as a sideline topic, but something that needs to go deeper and something that needs to be considered at a systemic level as well, at a societal level. Lying is not good for the well-being of others, and those in power should be held to account immediately. No vague, long drawn out changes of ideas, immediate action. And ultimately, we must self-govern. We do anyway. We have self-sovereignty. This is not permission. We must self-govern because then we have our own responsibility and accountability. Look forward to seeing you soon. And don't forget, the album is out soon. It's filled with powerful messages to uplift you, to elevate you, to transcend you beyond the experience that we have here. And this experience is not real in the sense that it's not how it's meant to be. It's not how it's meant to be. Do the best you can, friend, to live your life to the fullest for you and to connect with others in the fullest experience that we can have. Loving energy to you. Bye-bye.